Hello everyone, Heleen here, your detox coach. Well, I could be yours. I am a detox coach. Last month, the 21st of March, we had a detox group starting just as our Cape tour was full fling. And only a week after they've ended today, I can get to actual doing the recording of their categorized conditions that they listed for me. It was such a vibrant and full group. It was lovely being part of them. They were so supportive of each other and really just connected so well, if you consider they were all strangers with the day we started, right? And most of them completed the 28-day detox. I think to date it was my most successful 28-day detox in ratio to the participants. So yay for good detox groups and individuals that sits with cleaner and healthier bodies and are empowered to continue their healing and to also support their loved ones to heal. A little bit of what's happening in the world of Anuthan. We had our Cape tour in February and March this year, and what a blast it's been. We had about 7 different talks and did 7 different spaces, and had a beautiful people arriving at each talk. There was just a beautiful bunch of people at each talk. Each talk had its own characteristics, its own Q&As, its own personality. It was just absolutely divine, and it was so empowering and just restoring hope to see so many people focused on healing themselves and be a better citizen of this situation on this planet, and just, finding answers and finding truths, willing to implement it. This can become quite a isolating way of living, this protocol of fruits. You tend to be the odd one out when you arrive at a braai here in South Africa with your basket of fruits. You become kind of some people's topic and others just stay away from you. And most people are confronted just by witnessing you eating fruits, because immediately they ask themselves, okay, so why do I eat what I eat, and what does that make to my body? And so you don't even have to say anything. You're a confrontation just by being there. So I've learned to start handing out fruits. I will arrive with 2 baskets, one for my family to get us through the night, and the other one to hand out. Sometimes we'll build fruit mandalas and really just make it a game and make it lighter, So doing these group detoxes are really cool, because it does give us this situation where we are surrounded by other humans that's crazy enough to heal themselves on this protocol. And soon this won't be the radical protocol anymore. This will go back to norm, like we were back in the days, living on natural foods that's meant for these bodies. I always say, if there was 4 kinds of animals on this planet, we get frugivores, herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores, and I didn't look like any of them, I would have sat next to someone who's trying to convince me I'm a carnivore or an omnivore or a herbivore for that matter. I would have given them some time to explain to me why I'm now one of those 4. But it turns out that we're only 1 to 2% different from the primates, from most of the primates. This is our frugivores. Our bodies look exactly like theirs. The other day they discovered a constrictor, and it was in its DNA 10% removed from another constrictor. And in our DNA, we are 1 to 2% removed from our chimpanzees and our, what's that ape, a boba ape or something like that. That we are the closest in DNA to, So to try to convince me that this body that my soul is using is something else than a frugivore is completely a waste of time. Not that I don't want to speak to you. I'll always make time for humans to have a conversation, but you're not going to convert me. I mean, I can ask a 3-year-old what animal I resemble on this planet, and everything in my body resembles that animal. So that's just a little bit of an opening section there. So let's get going. I've, as always, categorized the conditions of this group into the underlying reason or the underlying cause why the condition is there. So first and foremost, I'll always have to remind you that it doesn't matter what condition we're speaking of here, the underlying cause is always a congested lymphatic fluid or acidosis or inflammation or anything ending with an itis. These are all the same things. This all means that my body somewhere is full of acids. Now, what do I say? What does it mean when I say someone is acidic or someone is alkaline? So let's talk about this for a little bit. The human body is made up of cells, right? Between 50 and 150 trillion cells, depending how healthy you are, really. And that is it. That's the building blocks of our body. There's some chemistry in the body that's floating about, some minerals, a little bit of minerals floating about. And then there's a fluid, a big river, which is the atmosphere, if you want, of the cells. Like we live in air, our cells are surrounded by this river. And this river exists of blood, 20%, and 80% lymph. So now, what are we speaking of when we say we're acidic? Are we speaking of the blood? Are we speaking of the cells? Or are we speaking of the lymph? So 7.4 pH seems to be the pH where the human body is the most satisfied to be. So when the blood is 7.4, we're quite happy, and the body actually works extremely hard to keep your blood at pH of between 6.9 and 7.4. The spleen, liver, and kidneys work extremely hard to keep the blood healthy like that. When your blood goes acidic, which is below 6.95, when it goes acidic, you're dead in 3 minutes, and there's no reversing it. You will basically drown in your own blood. So when we say someone is acidic, we're definitely not meaning their blood, right? So cells again, the moment a cell goes acidic, we call it a cancer cell. So if I say I'm acidic, I'm definitely not referring to my cells, otherwise I've got cancer everywhere, right? And I wouldn't even be alive if that's the case. So we're not speaking of cells going acidic, although cells can go acidic without you dying immediately. Not all of us are sitting with cancerous cells, although we could still be acidic. And the only thing that's left that we can store this acids in is the lymphatic fluid. So this lymphatic fluid is the fluid that makes up 80% of the fluid in your body. It's your sewage system. It picks up the waste in your body, and it's supposed to take it to the elimination organ successfully to be eliminated successfully. That's the only way toxins and waste can get out of your body, through your elimination organs, your kidneys, your bowel, and your skin. And then you have a backup elimination organ, your lungs. So that's the only way things getting out of your body. If it doesn't get out of there, if you're not sweating, your kidneys are not filtering, and your bowel is not moving well, you are actually having a huge problem, because most of your elimination organs are blocked, and you're accumulating a lot of wastes on a daily basis. And this is the reason we are dying. If our elimination process was working and our lymph was in such a state that it could pick up the wastes from our cells, it can pick up the digestive ash left after digestion, and it can take it to the elimination organ successfully for elimination, we wouldn't have been ill. We would be 100% healthy. But this is not the case. Most people I know probably haven't been filtering their lymphatic fluid since birth. I know I didn't. It took me 4 months on a fruit protocol just to get my kidneys to filter. And this is why our cells are hurt and burned and start deteriorating and breaking down. And cells makes up organs and glands, and organs and glands make up systems, and systems make up processes. And this is the way the body works. So if you are sitting with a compromised liver cell, you're most probably sitting with a compromised liver, which means you're sitting with a compromised digestive process, which means you're sitting with a compromised food processing, and the food that you put in your mouth is not necessarily getting to your cells already. And that's just one process we speak of, one organ and a few cells that is compromised in that organ. So if you want to heal your cells, if you want to make sure you've got cellular regeneration, you need to make sure that your lymph is sorted out and your elimination is working. That's the fourth process that needs to work for the first three processes to work well: digestion, absorption, and utilization. This is the processes that your food has to go through to get delivered to the cell. And the way we stay healthy is that this lymphatic fluid, the elimination process, is healthy and working well. Detoxing is not something we're doing to our body. It is a natural 24/7 process that's supposed to work all the time and is not working so well. And this is why we see so-called diseases. Diseases is detox symptoms, is survival symptoms of your body that the medical world has learned to categorize according to place and space in your body, and they gave it fancy names. In the meantime, the core of this is a lymphatic fluid that's congested, the acids that's accumulated in this lymphatic fluid, elimination organs not eliminating successfully. Now, why would your kidneys, for instance, not eliminate successfully? Because the lymph that surrounds the kidney cells are acidic and burning and damaging the kidney cells and obstructing the kidney cells in such a way that the kidney cells cannot perform their duty. So you're sitting with kidneys that can't filter. How do you fix it? You hydrate and alkalize the lymphatic fluid. This makes this lymphatic fluid come loose and becomes liquidy again. So the lymphatic fluid around the cells starts making space and moving away. There's not this sticky, smothering mass on the cells anymore. And as this situation is getting better inside the kidneys, nutrients can reach the kidneys again successfully. And this is the only way a cell can restore itself, right? Minerals, building blocks, amino acids and nutrients, fuel, sugars need to get to the cell so that the cell can regenerate itself and become a healthy cell again. The more and more this lymph around the kidney cells become more healthy and retract, and it's not this smothering substance anymore. Nutrients are reaching the cells are regenerating themselves, and now your kidneys start filtering again. And that is a whole new ball game for a healing human, to get the kidneys to a filtering stage, because from that moment on you're healing much faster and much better. Okay, so now that you know this, I'm going to go through some of the conditions to prove it to you. Let's start in the headspace. The conditions that was listed was brain fog, headaches, dizziness, tonsils removed, sore, bloodshot eyes, bad teeth, and deteriorating vision. So we are busy with everything here in the headspace, right? So there's a few things that happens in the headspace here. First and foremost, it's got lymph nodes right around the headspace. It's got a spine that some people say is also part of the lymphatic drainage of the headspace. And we've got tonsils, that is probably our biggest septic tanks in our lymphatic system, that receives the lymph coming from the brain. And in the tonsils itself, like all lymph nodes, there's bacteria, and it works on the sewage, just like your sewage system at home, right? If you have healthy bacteria in your sewage system at home, you never have a problem. Same, yeah. So it works on the waste. So the time the waste goes down, and as it moves down your body through different lymph nodes, it becomes less and less of a toxin and a waste, and more alkaline. So the time it reaches your kidneys is a pH of 6, and it doesn't burn the crap out of you. Okay, so the same lymph that's in the rest of your body is in your headspace, right? So you can't tell me your shoulder is congested but the rest of your body is not, or your head is congested and the rest of your body is not. That's not true. You've got one river that's everywhere. It's everywhere. So if it's congested in one space, it means it's congested everywhere. Sometimes it's worse because there's certain blockages, or there's reasons why it can't move somewhere else, and it's even more stuck than in other spaces of the body. That's true. A good example of this is someone that diabetic people, that their feet and their legs are amputated because it's dead. There's no more flow there. The river couldn't get there anymore. There was blockaging, right? But that always entails death. So it's quite a big thing in your headspace though, because this is where your brain is. This is where your cerebellum is for the autonomic nervous system. This is where your pituitary and your pineal gland is. These are hugely important organs for your nervous system, and the nervous system is quite important to keep healthy, because we've got blood that feed the cells, we've got lymph that cleans the cells, and then we have nerve that moves the cells. So every cell has nerve in it to be able to do its own functioning, like eating and defecating and restoring itself. All of that is nerve related actions. And then there is a nervous system right through the body. You've got the hardware, the brain, the spine, the receptors, the neurons, and all of that. And then you have the neurotransmitters that travels on it, that is produced by your glands, mostly your pituitary, your adrenal glands as well. So when this space in your headspace here are not draining successfully, it becomes a thing. Brain fog is not as silly as, oh, it's just brain fog. It's a big deal. It means your brain is plaqued up with lymph. It means it's becoming an obstruction. It's actually stopping neurons from connecting with each other, which is the memory loss, which is the brain fog, which is the fatigue in the head, you know. When you have headaches, it's very, very much related to brain fog, as well as to acids, as well as to spasmic things that happens, you know, things that actually convulses. It's a spasm, right? So many times you've got nerve spasms because of the nerve being weak, and this translates to headaches and migraines and that. We've got epileptic seizures. This is the nervous system being weak, the nerve cells being weak and then spasming because of constriction or obstruction, or not being able to regenerate themselves and be strong again, lack of neurotransmitters. All of these things can play a role in epileptic seizures, any kind of seizures for that matter. When your tonsils are removed, this makes it much worse, because the tonsils are very much a receiving space for this waste. So now this waste won't be draining that well, and it will come here and sort of just start accumulating because it's no successful path to go forward. And then another thing that will happen is those that do come down is not going neatly down to the tonsils and then to the lymph the way the body was designed to receive the wastes. It's now just going to tumble down, throat, neck, back, your spine, and that access is further deteriorating and bringing damage to the thyroid, the parathyroid, the vocal cord, the larynx and pharynx, everything that's here. The spine is getting deteriorated, stiff shoulders and scapulas is happening, all of that things is also a result if the tonsils was removed. And remember, most of the times our tonsils was removed because they were very inflamed, right? So they were already not coping with the amount of lymph that they had to deal with that comes from the headspace. Now they removed the septic tanks. It's not changing anything of the situation of the lymph. You need to change that situation to bring relief. Bad teeth means you've got bad gums. This is the soil of the teeth. Any life or death that's given to the teeth comes from the gum. It's not the tooth itself that goes rotten. It's because there's not, just like our plants, we know there's certain ways of farming that if you look at the soil very well and you build your soil, it will actually only attract the good insects and the bad insects won't come close. Exactly the same as our gums are very important. This is part of our face and a part of our headspace, right? So you can know if the gums are having abscesses and bad teeth and that, it's looking like this everywhere, Your hypothalamus will start looking the same. Your pituitary gland, your pineal gland, your cerebellum, your medulla, your mastoids, and your hearing, everything is in the same space. If there's acids there, it's hurting everything. The first places that's going to start showing breakdown is your genetic weak spaces. That's because those cells were weaker. They're going to die or act or show you the weakness much faster than the stronger cells will, right? And the reason for all these things taking place, deteriorating vision and bloodshot eyes, is because the acids are dry. Acids are a dehydrating factor. It's dry, it's sticky. The reason it's sticky is because it's dry. It becomes sticky, and you know what snot looks like. Yellow snot, brown snot, green snot, that's what it starts looking like. You're not coughing it up because it was just green, it was just sitting there. No, it came from somewhere in your body. It was sitting in between cells and now you're coughing it out, right? So it's very important to understand the lymph and to understand what can happen in your headspace if it goes bad. If there's too much acids in your headspace and you don't have enough steroids to deal with it, which translates that back again to low adrenal function, your body will start other ways of protecting your brain and your glands and that from this very abrasive acidic fluid, the lymph. It will use plaquing, either cholesterol plaquing or calcium plaquing, and this is what translates later into MS and into Parkinson's. It doesn't just happen overnight. It is a lifetime of buildup of acids and the response from the body in defense of it. There are so many humans on this planet at the moment dealing with Parkinson's. It's not even funny, and it's such a hard one to reverse because the reason it started was because of extremely low adrenal function, extremely low dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, so when they start shaking, it's because they lack dopamine. And what do the medicine will do? They give them dopamine. So what happens if you start taking something that your adrenals are supposed to be making? Those cells that was already weak, that now, because there's already dopamine in the body, these cells don't have anything to do. They become lazier and weaker and eventually die. So it's not the way to treat yourself. This is the same for hormone treatment, right? You don't want to treat your body with the deficiency in hormones you've got. No. You want to go back to the gland that is supposed to produce you enough hormones and check what is wrong with this gland and how can I fix it? And what is the answer each time? How do we fix something in our body? We hydrate and alkalize the lymphatic fluid, keep space for our body until our kidneys start filtering, work through the healing events that happens without suppressing it, and allow your body to purge all this accumulated and excessive toxins and waste that was accumulated over time. A little bit more on the neuro side of things, dizziness. It could be a few things. It could be your ears that's blocked up and this create vertigo, so that could be dizziness. It could be your cerebellum that creates fluctuations between your parasympathetic and your sympathetic because it's congested again, and that create dizziness. It could be low blood sugar that could create dizziness. There's not only one thing, but usually it's neurological, and even the low blood sugar usually is a neurological problem of the pancreas, not being able to produce enough insulin to actually utilize the sugars into your cells. Neuralgia or neuroma on feet, this is when your nerve cells in those areas of your body is weak. And now this lymph is an acidic mass that is touching all the cells in that area, but because your nerve is genetically weaker than the other cells surrounding it, it's actually the cells that is manifesting in pain and in deteriorating itself. So the moment you sort out the lymph, that will restore itself as well. Trouble sleeping. The pineal gland is in the head space, right? And the pineal gland is supposed to produce the melatonin, and enough melatonin for you to fall asleep and stay asleep. So if it doesn't do that, there's no use in taking melatonin, guys. You're actually just worsening the very gland that's supposed to make it. You can rather look at getting yourself desiccated pineal gland of a healthy organic animal, and you work on the space in which the pineal gland finds itself. You clear out the lymph, that surrounds the cells of the pineal gland. You open space so that nutrients can come in and that they can restore themselves. And as this pineal gland restores itself, your levels of melatonin will rise again, and you'll be able to sleep like a baby again. I don't know why they say that though. Sleep like a rock. Okay, so let's go to our womb area. DNC is a process where they remove growths from the uterus, fibroids, cysts, and endometriosis. Now, all of these is because the lymph that is surrounding all the cells of the womb, basically the uterus, the ovaries, and all of that is acidic. And it burns. You know what a baby's bottom look like if we don't remove the wastes in time, right? That's exactly what happens. It's not almost what happens. It's exactly what happens. When our cell is next to an acid, that acid burns the cell, and that cell eventually, if it doesn't stop burning it, it will burn right through it. It will kill the cell, you know? And cysts is literally little bubbles of wastes, of lymphatic waste that pops up because the tissue there is becoming so weak, it pops, and now it has this liquid inside, right? Fibroids is growth, so there's literally like attachments that's growing. In an acidic environment, things stick together. Tissues stick together. Endometriosis is when the colon sticks to the uterus. It's almost like they're being welded together because of this acids, right? Acids make things stick together. So now they're together like this. So when you've got a bowel movement, it rips it away from the uterus. I mean, it creates an open wound. Internal bleeding can even happen. This is extremely sore. My heart really goes out for anyone with endometriosis. The answer is not to play with hormones. The answer is not to remove your womb. It really is just to alkalize and hydrate your lymphatic fluid. The lymph that surrounds the cells of your uterus and your ovaries and that would eventually become liquid and alkalized, which allows the waste to be taken away successfully, nutrients to reach it, and they will regenerate themselves. So again, we're looking at the lymph. So appendix being removed, piles and hernias, this has got to do with our bowel area. These are the only conditions listed by this group. So removal of an appendix is quite a big deal, guys, because the appendix is probably the biggest factory of bacteria. So if you have any kind of bowel, reset kind of situation, or you used a lot of antibiotics and you lost a lot of your microorganisms, and that, having your appendix intact is such a big deal because it actually reestablished that microorganisms for you. Having it removed shows you that it was so overwhelmed by the acids earlier in your life already that it became inflamed, and the only way the doctors could help you was to remove it. So now all that bacteria is gone. So please keep in mind, especially if you've removed your appendix, to stay away from anything that will hurt your microorganisms. And this specifically includes chemical washing, like your MMS, Miracle Mineral Solution. Yes, use it when someone is dying, save them from death, and then work on to the herbs and that to heal themselves. Don't use it as a constant healing effect. It doesn't heal, actually. It kills microorganisms, good ones and bad ones. And you're going to eventually sit with a lymphatic system that doesn't have lymph nodes that's filled with bacterium anymore. And they're not going to be able to deal with the wastes in your body. And you're going to hurt when that wastes reach your kidneys without having been dealt with by the lymphatic nodes. Piles and hernias shows you that there is a connective tissue problem, which means the connective tissue is weak. So the moment you see something like that, other signs of this is spider veins and varicose veins. The moment you see something like this, you know there's a calcium deficiency. Now there's a two-way thing with calcium deficiency. One is that your parathyroid glands that's on top of the thyroid glands, there's 4 of them in total, are not producing enough parathyroid hormone, which your cell need to utilize calcium. So even if I eat calcium and my cell doesn't have a parathyroid hormone as a mouth to bring it into the cell, it's going to go to the toilet, or it's going to start calcifying somewhere else because of the chemistry in your body. We'll get to that in a bit. The other thing is, one of the 4 ways the body combats acidosis is by leaching calcium from your body matrix, leaching calcium from your connective tissue, from the skin membranes, cell membranes, from your bones, from all your tissue in your body contains calcium to be a successful structure, and there's plenty of it, and it's an alkaline mineral. So the body would leach it to buffer it. You know the zinc cream you put on a baby's bum? This is what it does. It buffers the tissue, it plaques against the tissue so that when the river of acids are coming past it, it doesn't kill the tissue immediately, So it's a defense mechanisms. So if you have lots of acids in your body and the memory stored in your DNA has taught your body to go into the world of calcium plaquing. Not everyone's bodies do it. It's going to leach calcium from the frame, and you probably won't be able to replace it because your parathyroid is in a hypofunction. So now you're sitting with this loss of calcium on every year. You'll be losing more and more and more calcium. And this is something they say comes with age. There's nothing like aging. It's weakening of cells. So the fountain of youth really is this understanding of knowing how to heal the parathyroid. How do you heal the parathyroid? You alkalize and hydrate the lymph so that the lymph here can start not being the sticky mass, move away from the cells, clear river of lymph coming through, picking up the waste, nutrients can get to it. That's how you heal the parathyroid. Okay, so just to... What happens now if there's a lack of calcium is the connective tissue that was strong would have held your colon in form. But because it's not strong enough, when there's some pressure applied, this colon will pop and hemorrhoids and hernias will happen. Of course, hernias doesn't just happen in the colon, but wherever it happens, it's because that connective tissue was weak and pressure was applied and it popped. And there's this ballooning or prolapsing that's happening now. Okay. Bronchiectasis is when the airways of lungs are enlarged. It's exactly the same as a hemorrhoid or a hernia. The tissue of that little bubble in the lung has become so deficient in calcium that it's popping into bigger pouches. And this is a problem because now liquid can stay in these pouches, bacteria can get into it. It becomes very problematic to have these pouches in your lungs. How do you heal it? You hydrate and alkalize your lymphatic fluid. Asthma is a two-way thing. You could have weak lung cellular structures that actually prevents you from taking in enough air and processing the oxygen. That is definitely an element of asthma. And then there's the autonomic nervous system. It's one of your autonomic systems that happens in your body, breathing, the diaphragm actually pulling and breathing, right? So many times there's not enough neurotransmitters going around, which is produced by the adrenals. The neurotransmitters is the running agent on the spark of the nervous system. If there's not enough of them around, the messaging is not delivered, the actions are not happening as it should. So your pituitary gland produce a hormone instructing your adrenals what to do to produce more or less neurotransmitters, and the adrenals produce these neurotransmitters to the ability of what they're able to produce. And when they are weak, they're not producing enough neurotransmitters. So there's not enough of this instructional chemistry in your body, and your breathing is not what it should be. So you're going to try to breathe, but it's not going to go in. It's not going to be received. It's not going to go in. And that is another element of asthma. So it's also more a holistic thing of how do you heal both nerve and your lungs? You hydrate and alkalize the lymphatic fluid. Okay, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, and lymphedema. So lymphedema lymphedema is not just a constipated lymph. That's when your sewage system has become so heavily acidic that is the agent that's actually killing your cells instead of serving your cells by removing the wastes. So the reason I group high blood pressure in the same group with high cholesterol and that is because the one are because of the other. So we have cholesterol in our body. A lot of our body works on cholesterol. It's absolutely true. Correct. Cholesterol is a much needed substance in our body. We can't remove all of it. We will die if we do. But we don't need excessive cholesterol. Remember I spoke about the 4 things that the body will do if there's not enough steroids to combat acidosis. One of them I discussed was calcium plaquing. Now cholesterol plaquing is another one of them. So this is when the pituitary and the hypothalamus asks the liver to produce more cholesterol because there's so much acids going around. We're losing friends. We're losing our cells, So again, the body plaques it like it plaques zinc. Some people have plaquing of just cholesterol. Some people have plaquing of just calcium. Some people have plaquing of both. So it's very individual in how your body decided to do this, right? But say this room was my body and I keep on plaquing cholesterol or calcium because there's so much acids and the acids comes in on a daily basis, more than once a day. Eventually I'm going to have this much space left in this room, and 80% of high blood pressures comes from this. So that your whole life you're actually at low blood pressure, which shows that your adrenals was low, right? So most and the medicine world accept low blood pressure completely. They don't even have a problem with it. In the meantime, low blood pressure is a big deal, guys. Low blood pressure shows that your adrenal function is low. This means you've got a deficiency in neurotransmitters, which is a major deal. It means you've got a deficiency in certain hormones like progesterone, which could be a major deal. Which means you've got a deficiency in enzymes, which is a major deal because you need enzymes to actually metabolize, utilize. We need enough enzymes for our body, the cells of our body, to actually utilize the minerals. So if there is iron coming towards the cell, but the cell doesn't have this enzyme produced by the adrenal to pull this iron in, the iron is just going to go to the toilet. So it's extremely important to not have a deficiency in these enzymes. And then the 4th one is steroids. If your adrenals are not producing enough steroids, you've got a deficit in it from birth, most probably, which means your body has never been able to deal with acidosis successfully. So that's where the calcium plaquing, the cholesterol plaquing, water retention is another one, and tumors comes in. So it's a big deal to have low blood pressure. You need to sort it out if you have low blood pressure. How do you sort it out? You sort out the adrenals. How do you do that? You hydrate and alkalize the lymphatic fluid so that you can start to heal. Okay, so high triglycerides is something that happens a lot with the people that jumps on the detox with me. Why? Triglycerides is basically just another word given for cholesterol that is inside blood and not plaqued or in other parts of the body. So people get really upset with me when they've done the detox for a month or two and all of a sudden their triglycerides is now shooting through the roof. But think about it. If you now are hydrating and alkalizing, you're not bringing in more acids. So the body firstly doesn't have to do more plaquing and the old plaquing becomes unnecessary. So as your body keeps on trusting you and you're building this alkaline environment in the inside and it happens one day after the other, this plaquing is coming loose to leave because there's no purpose for it anymore. And this cholesterol in your blood and lymph now translates into high triglycerides. So we don't always run away from the results as doctors do. Sometimes we completely understand what is happening because we understand how the body is healing itself. Hyperglycemia is when the pancreas are really weak. And why would the pancreas be weak? Either you got a genetic weak pancreas, which could be the reason, and then the pancreas function is obstructed by the lymph surrounding the cells in the pancreas. How do you heal it? You get rid of this lymph. Well, you don't get rid of the lymph, you heal the lymph. The lymph needs to be a flowy, watery, plasmic liquid. You know how a fresh discharge looks that comes out of your nose if you've just had something abrasive and it's running out of your nose? That is what a healthy lymph looks like. That's what we want to surround all our cells. When it goes to sticky white snot, yellow snot, green snot, it's not just snot that's in your nose or in your mouth area. This is what it looks like in between the cells in your body. If I'm to cut open at my bum and I'm full of acids and yellow snot, it's going to look like yellow and red spots like this because it's everywhere. It's going to be a network of it. All right. So I'm going to read quite a few now. And for most people, this is going to sound like way loose standing conditions. And I want to show you how it's the same thing that is in different parts of the body that has just been given different names. Rheumatoid arthritis. Ankylosing spondylitis, which is when the vertebra fuse together, osteoarthritis, fibromyalgia, calcific tendonitis. All of these are the same thing. Basically what happens, any kind of arthritis is a few things that plays a role. First, your bone density, right? If you lose bone density, eventually you're going to have these joint pains and that is translated to some other arthritis. You're also going to have calcification, which is now you've got calcium in your system, but you don't have enough parathyroid hormones coming from the parathyroid for your cell to utilize the calcium. And you don't have successful elimination. So that calcium is a loose agent just running around going wild until it bumps into a phosphorus. Whoops, and there it calcifies into a bone outside the bone matrix. And this is usually what happens in our joints. That's why we have all these deformities and knobs and things happening, all these growth that happens. This is when calcification is happening, when bones are being built because of the chemistry that's excessive in your body that can't get out of your body and that your cells can't use successfully. If you had enough of the enzymes to utilize phosphorus, and if you have had enough of the parathyroid hormone to utilize calcium, the calcium and the phosphorus wouldn't have just been running around your body and come together to calcify like that. Fibromyalgia is the same thing. It's now not bones though that is affected, it is tissue. You remember we spoke of endometriosis where the womb and the uterus and the colon would get stuck together. Fibromyalgia is the same thing, just somewhere else in the body. It's not in the womb. Anywhere else in the body, that tissues now are stuck together and are ripping apart, like a wound being ripped apart if they are stretched to do so, or if a certain organ needs to make a movement and the other one is not, then this ripping apart happens. It's an extreme, deep, deep pain that, again, I've got a lot of empathy for. But it's exactly the same with arthritis. Arthritis is in the bone matrix, fibromyalgia is in the tissue matrix. Calcific tendonitis is the tendons, that is, itis is inflammation. So it's lymph that's inflamed in the tendons, and now that tendons are getting weaker. When the vertebrae are fusing together, same exact thing. You know, when you're losing the tissue, the it's not sponges, but the things between the vertebrae that keeps it from being on top of each other, same thing. It is basically, it can't rebuild itself, so it is weakening and weakening and weakening because it's surrounded by a lymph that contains acids and not allowing nutrients in to actually heal. Okay, and then there's 3 left: chest pain, blood clots, and injuries. So blood clots comes from blood sticking together. When does things stick together? In an acidic environment. That's when things stick together. It's one of the characteristics of acids, is that it makes substances stick together because they dehydrate. It's another characteristic of acids. So if you go do your live blood analysis, you'll see these little towers of red blood cells that's stuck together. And this is quite bad. It means the top cell and the bottom cell are able to carry oxygen or nutrients or whatever. All the rest are not. So you're losing a lot of potential nutrients and oxygen to actually be delivered to your body. Blood clots is a bad version of that. That's when other chemistry as well is coming together and clotting and creating this bigger pieces of blood that shouldn't be there. Again, you hydrate and alkalize to heal this. Chest pain is usually when there's acids. Pain usually translates back to acids. Any kind of burning translates into pain. So chest pain means that something that's in your chest, be it your lungs, be it your heart, be it your breast tissue, something is very acidic and pulling and hurting and not being able to do what it does without being constrained. Again, hydrate and alkalize to fix it. So then I just want to touch on a few other things. It's almost not worth touching on this group because there's only a few to mention in each. But usually when certain very important parts of our bodies, especially glands, are affected by this acidic lymph that surrounded its cells, there's a further cascading effects happening in the body that goes wrong. We have actually spoken a little bit about it, like high blood pressure and low blood pressure. Because the adrenals are weak and not producing enough neurotransmitters, there will be low blood pressure. Why are they not producing enough neurotransmitters? Because it is congested by lymph constricting it, right? The reason, 80% of the reason you've got a high blood pressure is because this has been persisting throughout your life, which means you have a deficit in steroids and your body had to use other ways to combat acidosis and inflammation. And this is where the plaquing comes in, that then swings the low blood pressure to a high blood pressure. You can also have fluctuating blood pressure, which has to do with the cerebellum again, your autonomic nervous system. Some people, you only pick it up if you are able to take your blood pressure quite frequently, and then you're going to realize sometimes it's very low, sometimes it's very high. So it's this fluctuating, and this then usually boils down to the cerebellum. There is a case where high blood pressure can be created simply by very inflamed kidneys that pushes the blood pressure right up. Other things that's influenced by the adrenals specifically going down is, of course, your energy. And there the adrenals and the thyroid plays a role as energy centers. The thyroid mostly because it governs the temperature of your body. So the skin, which translates to the temperature regulation of your body. And certain enzyme functions can simply not happen when you're too cold or when you're too hot. So this makes the thyroid a metabolic gland, and this then also translates to energy levels. The same with the adrenals. Because of the neurotransmitters, the more dopamine you have, the more adrenaline you have, the more energy you're going to feel. So this is why so many people rely on a stimulating diet. What does this mean? There's 2 types of energy we can run on. There's stimulated energy and there's dynamic energy. Now, stimulated energy is when you use food stuff to stimulate the adrenals. Why? Because the adrenals in a stimulated space produce more of the neurotransmitters you want, like dopamine and adrenaline and that, to make you feel better. It really makes you feel better. And it doesn't make you feel better just because you want to feel better. You're not even healthy on the stimulated level yet. You should experience way higher levels than that. But because you've got low adrenal function, you actually use food like starches, sugars, refined sugars, caffeine, and meat, because meat contains adrenaline, which is a neurotransmitter. This stimulates the adrenals, right? And now in a stimulated state, it produces more of the chemistry you want, and then it falls down. And then you're going to eat your chocolate, and then it stimulates it, and you have more energy, and then it falls down. And then you have to have your coffee, and then you have to have your piece of meat, and then you're craving a starch, and then and we're eating so that this adrenals can be, and stimulation equals innovation. You can't keep on riding your car in red thinking it's not gonna break. So that's stimulated energy. Dynamic energy, on the other hand, is when you're actually building on every cell's energy. So now you're restoring all of your cells, between 50 and 150 trillion cells, to their full energy capacity. This is dynamic energy. This is systemic dynamic energy. Now my friend can walk in here and go like, come, let's go run a marathon. And I go run a marathon. I might not win, but I will definitely be under the top 20 maybe, because you've got dynamic energy. You can go without having to eat to receive the stimulations to be able to go. So this is quite a big difference in how you even do life, in a stimulating way or in a very dynamic and steady way. Anxiety is directly related to your level of neurotransmitters. Your nervous system is how you respond to life. If you are a weak nervous system and you're all like, oh, I'm not, you're not in a happy space, and something happens to you, it's like, now you're responding. Your response to the world is determined. If you're not able to respond well, anxiety sets in. So when you have a stronger nervous system, you've got high levels of neurotransmitters. Now when something bad happens to you, you are completely able to receive it, to integrate it, to work with it, to respond on it, right? The very way you do life changes. So if you have high levels of anxiety, it is mostly to do with the state of your adrenals. You need to really know how to fix your adrenals. How do you fix your adrenals? You hydrate and you alkalize. How do you hydrate and alkalize the lymphatic fluid? You eat fruits. Vegetables can do it. Vegetables will hydrate to a degree, will alkalize to a degree, but it takes more energy to eat vegetables, and it's not as hydrating. It's neither is it astringent like fruits are, and fructose is your highest form of fuel for your cells. If you look at Heleen photography, it takes the energetic field. It takes a picture of the energetic field of any given item. Now, according to Heleen photography, if you look at a picture of a raw steak, there's only little light bulbs on. If you look at a raw apple, it is completely lit up. And that light that you see there equals the energy it brings to your body. So eating high energetic food, and fruits are higher energetic than vegetables. And your body doesn't need, vegetables exist of more glucose than fructose. So when you eat vegetables, your body actually needs the pancreas to produce enough insulin to digest or to metabolize the glucose. When you eat fructose, there's no carrying agent necessary. The fructose diffuses into the cell. It falls from one atmosphere to a lesser atmosphere into the cell. No energy loss. That's why it's impossible. It's almost impossible to get a blood sugar spike from fructose. I've had people lying in hospital demanding only fruits, and of course in hospital it created a big tsunami of people now being worried about their blood sugar, and they got tested on the hour and they were astounded to find that their blood sugar didn't spike. I'm helping very many diabetic 1 and diabetic 2 people with those diseases hanging around their neck. I'm helping many of them to heal on fruits. When they eat their salads, they start going into the world of needing insulin, and that's a completely different ball game again. Gaining muscle, that was one of the things that one of the participants was worried about. They want to gain muscle. So how do you gain muscle? You need to remember that your body is a food processor, and if the 4 steps of your food processor is not working, you won't be able to build muscle. Remember, eating fruit, you can choose what you look like. You can look like a gorilla, or you can stay lean like a chimpanzee. Depends on what you eat and how you want to build your body. So the 4 processes that's necessary for you to utilize food well is digestion, absorption, and utilization. So utilization is where, and I mentioned this earlier, where adrenals play such a huge role in utilization of minerals. So let's use an example. If I'm a cell in my body and I scan myself and I decide, okay, cool, today, above and beyond the fuel I want for my functions today, I also want copper, iron, and calcium. Then I'm going to be able to restore myself completely. So now it's going to look around for the enzymes that the adrenals produce for copper and for iron. It's going to find it and it's going to attach it to it. It's going to sit like an antenna on it. And it's going to look for the parathyroid hormone that the parathyroid produce for calcium utilization, and it can't find one. Now the host eats and nutrients reach the cells. The iron is going to be magnetized to this enzyme produced by the adrenals. Was it copper? I said the copper is going to be pulled in by the enzyme, and the calcium is going to swim right past the cell because there's no parathyroid hormone to pull it into the cell, and that's utilization. So the first 3 processes, digestion, absorption, and utilization, is important to all work well to build your cells, and they can't work well if elimination doesn't work well. All our diseases, all our conditions, all our breakdown comes from an elimination process that is not working successfully, which means your lymphatic fluid is not doing its thing, your kidneys, your skin, your bowel, your lungs are not doing their things. Either one or more than one of them are not functioning as they should. And you're going to sit with a situation where you can't build tissue. You'll just lose more and more and more of your muscle tone, of your tissue as things get worse, you know. In the meantime, what you can do is you can hydrate and alkalize so your body can start detoxing successfully. This is going to regenerate the cells of all the organs that make up the digestive process. It's going to generate the cells of your intestines that makes up your absorption process. It's going to regenerate the cells of your glands that produce the enzymes and the hormones for utilization to happen. And that's how you build muscle. You don't build muscle by feeding your body a house that it has to break down. It's got a heap of wastes that the body can't deal with, but it's got the building material to work with. In the meantime, you could have just given your body the building materials, which is the minerals and the amino acids. So there's this half truth that they sold us that confused us a lot. They told us that proteins exist of amino acids. In the meantime, the full truth is all biological life exists of amino acids. Proteins are simply a complex amino acid structure. And just like all the other animals but carnivores, like even omnivores, if you look at the natural diet of natural omnivores like bears and that, they have 80% fruits and then a little bit of salmon, a little bit of protein. So omnivores is even in that space. But the same way herbivores and frugivores build tissue by eating plants, because there's enough amino acids in that plants to construct their own tissue, which is complex amino acid structures, which is protein. It builds its own protein. We don't have to eat protein, which is complex amino acid structures. We don't have to eat protein to be able to build. We need to eat to bring nutrients and building materials into the body. An apple would have been a blob of juice if there was no amino acids in the apple. So that is how you gain muscle. And then if we move over to the thyroid, we spoke of low energy, depression, and negative thoughts. So the physiological reason for depression is calcium deficiency in the cell membranes. Remember, every cell that makes up this body is a conscious entity. There's consciousness in everything, right? So every cell that makes up me is a conscious entity. When the calcium that's supposed to be in the cell membrane becomes deficient for either one of those 2 reasons, either it's being leached or we don't have enough parathyroid hormone to bring it back in. the cell becomes depressed. And that feeling of depressiveness is what you as host then picks up and display. So that's why we sit with so many postpartum depression, because mommy has been building a baby that took so much of her minerals, so much of her calcium. She most probably doesn't have a very good functioning parathyroid. So that is why she's got this deficit for a period. Some mommies can't get out of it. Some mommies are so far gone they can't get out of it, and that there's got horrible repercussions for the family and for themselves. And usually mommies takes a while to get through it, and their body eventually restores to a level of calcium again that the cell actually don't experience depression. So how do you heal depression? You hydrate and alkalize the lymphatic fluid by eating fruits. You use herbs to help your body going through the healing process. Remember, there's a healing process. If a very healthy person eats fruits, they build muscle. If a very sick person eats fruits, they purge first before they build muscle. So you're going to go through a healing process of getting rid of all the acids. It's going to take on a very unique face. Although we detox in the same way because we one species, our detoxing and healing process are very unique. Each individual has an extremely unique healing process because of their genetic makeup and their lifestyle choices to date. Hypothyroidism is simply when hypo is when anything is not performing well, so it's underperforming. Hypothyroidism shows that the thyroid is underperforming. Why would the thyroid be underperforming? Because the lymph surrounding the thyroid cells are actually congested and are preventing those cells from receiving nutrients to regenerate themselves. So they're literally becoming weaker and weaker and weaker until you hydrate and alkalize, bring in the right kind of energizing so that these cells can regenerate themselves and you can fully heal. And that's about it. That's about it, guys. That went very fast, below an hour. Thank you so much for listening. It's great to have you part of this healing movement on fruits. We are very excited with the consequences of our Cape tour. We're looking at having fruit festivals happening and gatherings and more training and just a lot of fun things that we're planning. We're also going to do some retreats this year. So do be on the lookout for that. Do try to convince yourself to try this out. Hey, don't allow your training and your learning today to block you from this truth. You will feel it in your body. There's no denying it when you start. So don't be too shy. Do this. You don't have to do it with us. Just go do it. Go research a bit. Know that when you start eating fruit, you will have healing events. Don't run to the doctor so that they suppress the detox symptoms. You've created the detox symptoms. This is what you want so that you can get rid of all that accumulated wastes and toxins and have a full life while you walk the face of this planet. That is all from me. Until next time, your detox coach, Heleen from A Northern Infinite Wellness.